Good morning and welcome to another week of Subject to Finance on Monday the 25th of September. This week I'm focusing in on policy in the wake of the elections and what's coming up, and in particular on policy related to housing and home affordability. So I'm going to talk this week around about what I call the left block, which is Labour and the Greens in large. I might touch on a little bit of other stuff there. And then next week I'm going to focus more on the National ACT block, which I'll call the right block. One of the things that I found as I was going through and looking at the different policies is actually there's not a hell of a lot of difference across the parties. They're very, very centric. And in fact, if you look at National and Labour, you know, they've actually got some of the same policies. So, you know, there's kind of, it's quite a narrow band of variance, and effectively a lot of what the different parties are trying to achieve is actually quite similar. So there's nothing really too radical in there unless you get out to the wings. So if you get out into New Zealand First in particular, you start to see some different stuff going on, and probably Te Party on the other side. But the rest are fairly centric. So before I start and delve into the policies, I noticed that Ipsos, which is a market surveying business, had done they do a survey called the New Zealand Issue Monitor, and in terms of what those key election policies are or issues are that people are looking at, housing and the cost of housing is number 3 in terms of the severity or the level of the issues when it comes to housing and cost of housing. So it's a big thing. And when Labour voters are asked in terms of their voting base as to the importance of it, 20% see it as number 1. And with National, about 31% of it see it as number 1. So it's a high level topic or a high level issue in this election. So we're going to start with Labour. So Labour's obviously been in for 2 terms now, and the big ticket item when they came into power was housing. They were coming in off the base of no new sort of state housing for a very long time, and a population growth in New Zealand that was really putting pressure on that stock, and it became a really topical area of focus. When Labour came to power, there was 66,146 state houses, and in the 2 terms that they've been in power, they've added another 13,364 to that. So state housing as it sits today, or Kāinga Ora's stock of housing, is around about 79,510 houses. I think Labour really, they copped a lot of flack early on in that first term with the different housing policies that they put in place not really working. I think Phil Tyford was at the head of it then. And it took them a little while to get the engine going, but they've certainly made a dent there now with that 13,000 odd of new houses in that period. So, and obviously Labour's been typically, historically, the government that focuses on that sort of state housing stock, whereas the national side of things have more of a leaning towards privately owned investment portfolio. So I don't think that really changes here. If I look at the main policies that Labour have, they've focused more on things like removing the GST off fruit and vegetables, universal dental care, free public transport for people under 13 and half price under 25. So they've done those sort of probably more socialist policies as their key policies. It's interesting in their manifesto around housing, they admit there's no kind of quick fix to the housing crisis, and they state that they're basically making good progress by improving supply, removing red tape, building more public and transitional housing, and curbing unfair practices that drive up prices. So they also offer, obviously there's been first home loan grants that have come into fruition under this Labour government, and they've got some rent to own policies that they've put in place also. So that not a lot of things that are changing here, I think, for Labor. They state black and white that they're going to double the number of houses with rooftop solar in the next term, with an emphasis on lowering household bills, reducing emissions, boosting renewable energy generation. Another big thing they're looking at is reform of the Resource Management Act, and that's kind of to reduce red tape, improving housing supply, and to better protect the environment. The Resource Management Act has been contentious for just about every party, and I guess wherever we go, we're going to see reform of that. Obviously, there's been the banning of no-cause terminations. They're focused on limiting rental increases to once a year, enabling tenants to make changes like quake-proofing in bits and pieces, and they got rid of the unfair letting fees, which they call them unfair letting fees, which drove up the costs for families. They're also working to regulate the residential property market sector, protecting both renters and landlords, so a bit of change around that as well. And continued support for the Infrastructure Acceleration Fund that's essentially there for roading and water and flood management and bits and pieces tied into the development of housing, so subdivisions and bits and pieces. The IFA fund is approximately $1 billion and it supports new or upgraded bulk infrastructure. Maori housing, Labor is proposing continued investment in Maori housing through Kaingaora, a 4-year, $730 million commitment to speed up the delivery of Maori-led housing, the fund of both small-scale housing projects and larger developments, from repairing existing homes to building new ones. So they'll continue the rollout of investment in Maori housing. There's been about 1,000 houses built in that space so far. So of that 13-odd thousand that's gone in over the last few years. Continue partnering with iwi to build houses and get whānau into houses. And they have the Progressive Home Ownership scheme, which includes a dedicated Maori pathway. So yeah, there's that focus on working with iwi and getting iwi into housing. So those are kind of the main things for Labor. You know, it's really just a continuation of what they've been doing. Some of the things that I would have thought would be faster, and you know, I don't really have an opinion on these policies, and I'm not going to give you my opinion overall, but Resource Management Act, it's been a problematic act for everyone, and while it's touched on in here, it would be nice to see a bit more clarity around what's happening there. Moving on to the Green Party. The Green Party is very focused on controlling the increase of rents and having a set index around that limits the ability for landlords to push through a maximum kind of rent index on an annual basis. So they want to sort of keep it in line with overall inflation and make sure that tenants are protected in terms of overly zealous increases. The party has a pledge to renters, so they're very focused on renters. They, like most of the parties, are wanting to see another $35,000 affordable homes put in place over the next 5 years. I think that's probably quite a target, given that we've done 13,000 odd over the last 6 years or so. So how they do that, they probably need to provide a bit more depth around, provide long-term funding for this initiative, and form contracts with various suppliers to scale up construction. So they do talk about scaling up, but there's not really the clarity as to how they're going to do that. Establish a standard for housing affordability, maintaining Kaingaora structures and its build program. For any large to medium scale housing developments, the party says it would encourage forming partnerships with local iwi, so very consistent with Labor. iwi and hapu focus that reinvest proceeds from Crown property sales into further housing development. Policy cost for the Greens, they've got it down at 12.9 billion over the next 5 years, so at least they're quite explicit on that. I also had a look at the policy for Top Party. It doesn't really give me a lot in terms of housing. It's very focused on the kind of under 30s and affordability around things like public transport and bits and pieces. And Tea Party, I think you could probably say, is a continuation of what you'd see in the Labour/Green sort of strategy for housing, but with a bigger emphasis on the iwi element and obviously getting iwi into affordable housing than probably the two of those, although they're both quite focused in terms of the, in fact all of the left leaning parties have quite a focus on that Maori Housing Partnership piece. Yeah, so that's it in terms of the left block and my focus on it. I hope you found that useful and hope to see you again next week as we go through the National Act block. Have a great week. Cheers. Bye.